Prerequisite to getting business, you must be talking to the person who makes a decision. They must be pre-approved. They must have a problem you can solve or want something you have. Don't underestimate want as compared to need. That's where he talks about getting deep inside what they really want in the house, because people will pay more. They must see you as a credible individual. You have to earn the right. I call it ETR. You have to earn the right to get business from people. You can't expect people to do business with you just because you have a price and you're nice and you showed them a bunch of houses. Don't expect that. That's not proper. But I call this, I actually have a name for it. There's this guy that's worked for me for 17 years, and I have an absolute belief in this guy that if he's involved in a transaction and he visits with the client 3 times, the sale is ours. Because every other competitive salesperson, I call it starting with the glass full. Everybody starts with a full glass with any client. And I am convinced that salespeople empty those glasses through incompetency, inability, doing the wrong thing versus the right thing, not being prepared, not knowing their products, not knowing pricing. You lose credibility with the customer. Or you don't know how to communicate to them. And so you lose credibility with them. Okay? What's a question? What's an objection? Give me an example of a question you hear when you're selling real estate. What could a question be that a client would ask you? I'm going to ask you.
A question that I get asked?
Yeah. What's a question when you're showing real estate? A question that you hear over and over and over and over again. A question.
Is this a good neighborhood?
Is this a good neighborhood? Yeah, that's a question, right? So they're not saying, I've heard it's not a good neighborhood, right? It's just a question. Is this a good neighborhood? And if you're experienced, you would tell them why it's a good neighborhood. It's got a good school system, you know, not a lot of robberies, rapes, or murders in this neighborhood. It's a safe neighborhood to raise kids in. You see all the kids in the neighborhood. So that's a question, right? If they asked you that several times, the second or third time, in my view, once they ask it, it's a question. If they ask it 2 or 3 or 4 times, like what's your lock period, right? What's your rate? How many points is in it? If it gets asked 2 or 3 times, it becomes an objection. You should be prepared to handle it. Twice is a concern. 3 times an objection needs to be addressed. How many of you have had formal sales training of 100 hours or more in your life?
Does that include the properties that you sell?
Absolutely. Okay, so you've had formal sales training, okay? It's interesting. If you go and look at people that make a lot of money, sales is a good, it's the road to the CEO suite in many organizations. It's not often the CFO or the lead counsel that become the CEO of the company. It's usually the person who produced the most revenue in a company. And yet, if you went to get an education in college, which colleges in town offer advanced sales training? Which ones?
Was it Ratty Institute?
I get your point.
They do? No, there's actually a college now that does. There's 2. San Diego State actually has a program for sales training, and UCSD has a formal college now in the business group of teaching people how to sell, because they were told for so long, you need some formal training. So, objection handling, understand the issue. When you get a real objection, so somebody deliver to me a real objection that you hear on a daily basis in selling real estate. And I'm first going to validate whether I believe it to be a real objection, the reality in which you can't fix it, or it's an excuse. So somebody offer me an objection you hear.
Lost my job. No money.
I lost my job. That's reality. Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear that. And I wish I could help you when you do get employed. I'd love to help you buy a house. That's that you can't overcome that, right? It's what it is. Do you ever hear price objections? Whether it be your commissions, the price of the home, does everybody come to you saying, the price is just perfect, we'd like to get it at that price? So you have an unrealistic buyer out there these days, aren't they? Because everybody reads the paper. And I know in our neighborhood, the houses were selling for $2.7 million 2 years ago. Now they're selling for $1.8 to $2.2. But guess what people offer on every one that they come into? $1.5. They take 300 grand off, and they'll take it or leave it. Well, they don't take it because they don't need to sell it. So people are being unrealistic. So your goal is to talk about the price objection as if it's a real. So when I say understanding an objection, how do you handle an objection when you hear it now? What's your method? You're new to the organization, right?
Yeah.
What's your method of, you hear a big objection, how do you handle it?
Kind of been at it for a little while, so.
Just figure it out? So you just do what makes sense, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, common sense a little bit, but.
Good.
You know.
Don't ever forget that, okay? Don't ever forget the common sense part. How do you do it?
Well, if I'm caught off guard, sometimes I'll just repeat the objection back in the form of a question,
That's a good idea.
and then I get more information.
You get more information. So see, that's smart. You're getting it. What do you do when you get an objection?
Find out what the core of the objection really is.
Okay, so you go find it out, right? Yeah, good idea. What do you do when you get an
Actually
objection?
overruled.
Overruled.
No, I'm just-
You're a comic, and you.
I find out, it's all up in the air now what the question is, but whatever it is, get on their side of the issue, and then I try to solve it for them.
Okay, you said something important. What did you say? Get on
Their side of the issue.
their side of the issue. Okay, and I call it getting on their side of the table. And I've always seen many sales trainers or training courses get you into, as soon as you hear an objection, what do they tell you to do? Close, 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 close on objections, right? Which is absolutely wrong. You become adversarial, you become confrontational. I do not believe in that method. It should be comfortable, it should be gentle, it should be wonderful, it should be a good experience. So when you hear an objection, how you buy time is by restating
Well,
it.
I buy time to restate it and then until I gather my thoughts.
I understand. Just learn these two words. If you can walk away, I'm going to have 4 slides here for you. If you can learn how to use that with any objection you ever hear, because I'm convinced there's like 5 objections in the world that are real. 5 real objections. Then there's reality, which you can't fix, you can help out. And then there's excuses that salespeople make as to why they don't get sales. The customer gives them the ability to make those excuses. So, saying I understand your concern about price. Everybody's concerned about it these days in light of what's going on in the economy. The next thing you do is you expand on the objection. And this is what you did instinctually. And I don't think you've ever had, nobody trained you to do that, right? So people buy from people they like or people who like them. Why do people buy from Steve? Steve's a likable guy, isn't he? Right? So, guys, let's be like Steve when we're selling real estate. If I was selling real estate, which by the way, I've only sold 3 houses in my life, so I have no right to be here to tell you how to sell a house. But I put a sign in the grass, and then I sold them. Okay? So, let's think of what Steve does. Some of those little things, we all can't be that way, but you can copy some of the things he's doing. So, people buy from people who they like, or empathy. Number 1, when I'm interviewing salespeople, I interview salespeople and hire them for senior level executive selling positions, VP of sales, highly paying jobs. You know what the first thing I'm looking for? The E word. I want something, well, the E word energy is gotta be there, but I'm looking for empathy. Why am I looking for empathy? One of you answered this question. It gets you on the same side as them. Remember you said that about getting on their side, understanding what they're doing? You said it. So by expanding on the objection and sharing a similar personal experience or a customer of yours that you had or a customer. So this is where I buy time. But I do it, you know what I do it? I believe people throw us objections to try and get us to get the salesperson reaction. And I consider that when we do this and we're calm, I understand your concern about price. You know, often when I'm buying products, I'm concerned about the price also. But what I've learned through the years is that the value of something often outweighs the significance of low price initially. Have you had that experience also? The next thing I do, which is what you talked about, is I don't ask for the commitment yet. I isolate the objection. Now, So I understand you expand and tell them about a customer or yourself, a similar experience, you're getting on the same table, and you're getting on the same side, you're putting an arm around and say, let's look at this together, but really empathize. Quality salespeople really empathize with the question they ask or the concern they have about price, right? Isolate the objection. This is where salespeople spin out of control. Most salespeople hear an objection, they zoom in for the close, right? They answered that objection, and what does the customer then do? The client or customer then offers another one, and another one, and another one, and you end up playing, I call it, sales tennis. You end up knocking the ball back and forth for a long time, but nothing happens. So by empathizing, isolating, so how do you isolate the objection? Here's what I say to price, and this is my answer for price, whether it be software sales, home sales, any type of sale in the world. I don't just say, well, geez, how can we discount it? Because what happens when you discount the price on a purchase of a home or the sale of a home? What happens to you personally?
You make less.
Oh, really? Okay. So there's a value to learning how to sell at a price that's a bit higher, right?
Dan's got it down. I got to learn from Dan on that one.
He knows how to sell.
Yeah, he's my mentor on that note.
Okay, so you isolate the objection, and how in respect to the price, I have one question, and what is it specifically about the price that you're concerned about? What is it specifically about the price that you're concerned about? It might be that the payment's $20 too high, or you can work with your mortgage broker to assist you on something. It might be a program that would benefit them, some kind of a step program, if those still exist in this world. It may be more down to reduce the payment, but it may not be the offering. It's just everybody's been told to get a better price all their life, right? So nobody walks in anywhere, and my wife's taught me this now. She walks in anywhere, I don't care where it is. We were at Nordstrom's on Sunday, and she looked at this necklace she wanted, and she said, I see the price, but that's not the real price. What can I get it for? She did. No, she said it to the Nordstrom sales lady. And the Nordstrom sales lady handled it very well. She said, oh, that's interesting you asked. And she discounted it, which she shouldn't have done. Because my wife just asked that of everybody. But she wasn't very good at what she did. She just discounted it. She said, yeah, we have a sale coming up on Monday, so I'm going to give you that price now.
So she got her necklace.
She got her necklace. But so she asks it all the time. But price, you've got to isolate the objection. So what is it specifically about the price? Is that the only thing about this, acquiring this home that concerns you? Or is there anything else? So you get all of the objections. And I don't care if there's 5 or 6 or 7 objections. You write them all down and you handle them in the same manner. So I understand, expand on it, isolate, then you ask for the business. Okay? And asking for the commitment is after you've effectively addressed their concerns and never before. It's inappropriate to ask somebody to make an offer in a house if you have not addressed their concerns. So I consider this is where, you talked about it, common sense and thinking. I relate to them and have empathy for them in any acquisition because I want to make sure I understand what they do. Closing is not confrontation. Who wins a fight? And this is from a guy who had about 500 of them in his life. Who wins a fight? Who wins a fight? Is there a winner or a loser?
The aggressor, the one with the will to win.
All wrong. No one wins a fight. I was professed to have won 99% of my fights in my career, at least in my own mind, right? Years later, when I was in the surgeon's office, when I was 36 years old, for my back surgery, said, you really took a lot of beatings. When I was in, my nose started bleeding about a year later, and I had to go in and have it rebuilt, and he said, the surgeon said it would take about an hour and a half to do the nose rebuild. Do you know how many times he said he thought it had been broken? Because they can actually look at it. He said 14 to 15 times your nose has been broken. When I had the screws put in my thumb to rebuild, to screw my thumbs in. So I really won those fights, didn't I?
99% of the time.
99% of the time. No one wins a fight, and the only reason I bring this to your attention is no one wins a confrontation. No one wins a confrontation. And if you think someone does, you're fooling yourself. Okay? When you ask for a commitment, never speak until they respond, no matter how long they wait. When you write a number down or you ask them for what they want to offer for the home or what they'll accept for you make the offer, you push it across the table, and you shut up. Okay? And you may have heard that many times. You never speak again until, and gang, I've had people in big transactions, and I'm talking in the millions of dollars. I actually had a CFO once in his office, and it was at Edison International, if you've ever heard of the company. It was the CFO of the parent company. And we were having a real nice conversation. Then there's him and his VP of IT, and there's three of us on our side of the table. And he spun his chair around after we asked the closing question. I asked the question. And he sat and he looked out the window. And he looked out the window. And he looked out the window. And do you know how long? I think it was about 60 seconds. I thought it was about 2 years in my life. But I never spoke. I never spoke. I never spoke. And I saw my guy, Tom Gus. He was gonna add more, and he was, getting ready to deliver. And I actually kicked him in the ankle. And thankfully, he didn't scream or yell. But once you ask a closing question or a commitment, shut up. Okay?